They smelled him before they saw him. "Ikenna Don, come again!" someone shouted as the fishy scent sliced through the air like a slap. Laughter exploded from a gang of teenage boys balancing crates of tomatoes. Flies buzzed around them, but they acted like Ikenna was the only pollution in the market. He kept walking, barefoot, a rusted basin of fresh tilapia balanced on his head. His faded t-shirt clung to his chest, damp with river sweat. His fingers were stiff from ice water and early morning gutting, but his eyes, sharp, quiet, always watching, missed nothing. Every morning before the sun blinked awake, he was at the docks with Mama Nkichi, lifting baskets, scaling fish, and rinsing blood into the canal. His reward? Mockery. "Mr. Titus, wetin they smell? Bros, I beg shift. Fish odor one kill me." Ikenna didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't waste breath answering boys who knew nothing about hunger. He wasn't just carrying fish. He was carrying his family's tomorrow. And he didn't need anyone's approval to do it. What the market didn't know was that Ikenna had learned more in that muddy space than most kids in air-conditioned classrooms. He listened when women bargained. He watched politicians drive by in convoys pretending not to see the poor. He memorized license plates, vendor patterns, even which customers paid with fake naira. Everyone saw a poor boy soaked in fish water. But Ikenna, he saw a world no one else was paying attention to, and the world was about to see him too. One humid afternoon, a sharply dressed elderly man leaned on a silver-handled cane as he approached Mama Nkechi's fish stand. His clothes were neat, but his eyes held a tired curiosity. "You the one they call Fish Boy?" he asked, looking at Ikenna. Ikenna straightened. "Yes, sir." The man grunted. "Wrap me 5 of those tilapia." As Ikenna packed the fish, the man asked, "You go to school?" "No, sir, not anymore. Mama couldn't pay after Papa died." The man hummed. "But you can speak well." "I listen, sir," Ikenna said simply. "When you listen well, words come easy." The man chuckled. "Smart mouth. What's your name?" "Ikenna, sir." The man nodded, took his fish, and left. No one knew who he was, but the next day he returned, and the next, until his visits became routine. What Mama Nkechi didn't know was that this customer was no ordinary man. He was Chief Odigwe, a retired senator known for helping the president with difficult national decisions. And Ikenna, smelling of fish and humility, had just gotten on his radar. Chief Odigwe's driver was confused. "Sir, why always that boy's stand? Fish day everywhere." But the old man only smiled. "That boy has eyes, and not just the ones on his face. He sees." At home, Chief Odigwe wrote in his leather journal, "Met a boy with a mind like a sponge. Sharp, alert, humble. Has the makings of a future leader if nurtured. Reminds me of myself at that age." Back at the market, the boys laughed harder. One of them, Chidi, made a cardboard medal and hung it around Ikenna's neck. "Best smelling boy in Port Kano." The crowd roared with laughter. Ikenna did not. He took off the medal, folded it, and put it in his bag. Later that night, he sat outside under the stars and whispered, "One day they won't laugh. They'll listen." Mama Nkechi came out and ruffled his hair. "What are you dreaming about again?" "Big things, Mama," he said. "Things that don't smell like fish." She laughed, but in her eyes there was pain. She knew dreams were dangerous for boys like him, but she also knew her son was not ordinary. Chief Odigwe couldn't get Ikenna out of his mind. At a weekly luncheon with a federal minister, he mentioned the boy. "There's this child in Port Kano. No schooling, yet he quotes policies better than some advisors. His eyes, they observe too much." The minister smirked. "You and your charity cases." Odigwe leaned in. "He's not a charity case. He's a national resource." That week, he penned a letter and sent it straight to the chief special advisor to the president on youth and development. Attached was a brief profile. No surname, no school certificate. Just one name, Ikenna. The letter ended with the line, "Mocked for his scent, but marked by greatness." At the fish stand, Ikenna had no idea that a file with his name had entered Aso Rock, the seat of Nigeria's power. But something stirred in the air. The market boys noticed that Chief Odigwe's visits had stopped. Ikenna noticed too. "Maybe he's tired of fish," Mama Nkechi said. No, Mama. Something is coming. 3 weeks later, a large black SUV stopped at the market. Its tinted windows drew attention. A man in a suit stepped out, holding an envelope with a gold seal. Where is Ikenna? The market froze. Ikenna? The fish boy? Someone laughed. Mama. Nkechi rushed forward. What happened? What has my son done? Nothing wrong, Ma. This is from the office of the president. Gasps erupted. The man handed the envelope to Ikenna. He opened it, hands shaking. Inside was a letter. Dear Ikenna, you are hereby invited to the Presidential Youth Forum in Abuja. You have been identified as a remarkable thinker. Kindly come with your guardian. Your transportation and lodging will be provided. The market fell silent. The boy who smelled like fish had just been summoned by the president. Ikenna had never entered an airplane. The only planes he knew were the ones that flew high above the market skies while people pointed at them and said, Big men day inside that one. Now he was one of those big men. At the airport, he and Mama Nkechi were treated like royalty. They wore their best clothes. His was an oversized shirt ironed stiff with starch. Hers, a faded wrapper she had worn to her wedding. But she walked tall. On the flight, Ikenna stared out the window in awe. The man seated beside him asked, Is this your first time flying? Ikenna nodded. And not my last. He clutched the letter tightly in his pocket. He didn't understand everything that was happening, but he knew life would never smell the same again. At the market, the boys who once mocked him were unusually quiet. Chidi kicked the dirt with his sandal. Nah, fish boy dey enter plane now, he muttered. The Presidential Youth Forum was a gathering of the country's brightest teenagers, sons of senators, daughters of CEOs, children who attended international schools and carried themselves with practiced confidence. Then there was Ikenna. He walked in with wide eyes, clutching a notebook and a biro. Some students sneered. Is that the one who smells like fish? They whispered. News had traveled fast. But when the group was split into teams to propose solutions for unemployment in rural communities, it was Ikenna's group that stood out. And it was Ikenna who took the floor. He spoke clearly, passionately, drawing from his real-life market experiences. We don't need fancy ideas, we need access. Give boys like me training, small capital, and dignity. We'll build our own futures. The hall was silent. Even the president, seated in front, leaned forward. Who was this boy? Among the youth delegates was Tade, the son of the Minister of Finance. He had always been the star. Until Ikenna arrived. During the debate session, Tade attempted to mock Ikenna's ideas. Maybe you should go back and sell catfish, he sneered. This place is for thinkers, not traders. Ikenna didn't flinch. It's funny how the ones who inherited money are always allergic to the ones who earned it. The crowd gasped. Even the moderators exchanged glances. Tade's smirk vanished. He had underestimated the boy from the market, and so had the nation. The next day, major newspapers carried the story. Fish boy stuns presidential forum. From the muddy stalls of Port Kano to the grand halls of Abuja, Ikenna, a 13-year-old fish seller, captivated the country with his passionate plea for real economic change. In Port Kano, the market erupted in disbelief. I know, Am, one woman shouted. I even buy fish from Am last week. Mom and Kechi sat quietly in front of their kiosk, tears rolling down her cheeks. A woman who once feared for her son's future was now watching him rewrite it. The boys who mocked him? They didn't laugh anymore. At the final session of the forum, something unheard of happened. The president asked for Ikenna to sit beside him on stage. Young man, he said into the mic, you reminded me today that greatness is not a matter of birth. It is a matter of courage. He turned to the crowd. If we want to fix Nigeria, we must start by listening to boys who smell like fish and think like kings. Thunderous applause followed. And Ikenna? He sat quietly, a small smile on his lips. But in his heart, a storm of hope had begun. After the forum ended, reporters swarmed Ikenna like bees on ripe mangoes. Cameras flashed. Boom mics swung into his face. Someone asked, Did you expect to be here, Ikenna? No, he said honestly, but life has ears. If you speak truth long enough, one day it listens. His reply went viral. By evening, he was trending on social media. Nigerians from all walks of life were reposting his speech clips. People in suits debated him on radio shows. Street boys in Lagos quoted him in arguments. Even university students began to ask, who is this boy with the fish smell and a lion's mind? Brands started reaching out, offering scholarships, endorsements, interviews. But Ikenna wasn't moved by the noise. He turned to Mama Nkechi. Can we go home? She blinked. Back to the market? Back to where it started, he said. They need to see. What happens when a dream doesn't die in the gutter? The market had never seen anything like it. Two black SUVs crawled through the dusty entrance. Security men stepped out first. Then the door opened and Ikenna emerged. Same sandals, same eyes, but different air. Calm, unshaken. Is that Ikenna? One boy whispered. He come back? Mama Nkechi stepped out after him, wearing a brand new wrapper and jeel. The entire market froze. Ikenna walked straight to his mother's stall and sat on the same stool he'd always used. I came to finish my shift, he said with a smirk. Then to everyone's shock, he picked up a tilapia and began scaling it with the same rusty knife. No pride, no show-off. Just Ikenna, unchanged. That was the moment they knew. The fish boy hadn't just gone to the top. He brought the top back with him. Chidi couldn't face him. He watched from behind a pepper stall, eyes burning. Just a few weeks ago, he had mocked Ikenna, made fake medals, and laughed with the loudest voice. Now Ikenna was shaking hands with dignitaries, being filmed and quoted nationwide. Mama Nkechi spotted Chidi hiding. She didn't say a word, just looked at him, long and hard, and that silence stung more than any insult. Later, when the crowd had thinned, Chidi approached slowly, like a thief in daylight. Ikenna, he muttered. I'd sorry. Ikenna looked at him. For what? Chidi kicked the dust. For laughing when I should have been learning. Ikenna gave a small smile. Next time, learn first, then laugh later. No grudges, just truth. That day, Chidi stopped being the loudest voice in the market. He started listening. 3 weeks after the forum, a new letter arrived, this time by private courier. The envelope was thick, sealed in gold, with the presidential insignia embossed on the front. Inside it read, Dear Ikenna, the president would like a private audience with you. You are requested at the villa for a closed-door policy discussion. Office of National Youth Strategy. Mama Nkechi trembled when she read it. Villa ke? As in, the president's house? Ikenna folded the letter. Yes, Mama. It looks like they don't just want to hear me. They want me to help them think. She pulled him close. My son, don't change. I won't, he whispered. Even if the villa serves me golden yalaf, I'll remember the taste of roadside Gary. The presidential villa was nothing like the market. It was quiet, too quiet. The floors shone like mirrors. The air smelled of lavender and money. Ikenna was ushered into a small conference room. A few minutes later, the president entered, not with an entourage, but alone. Ikenna, he said, extending his hand. Ikenna stood, shook it firmly. Sir, the president gestured to the chairs. Let's talk, not politics, just people. They spoke for an hour, about the market, about poverty, about dignity. Ikenna told him how a clean suit doesn't make a clean leader, how real change starts from understanding, not announcing. The president was silent for a moment. Then he said, Ikenna, how would you like to help shape our national youth policy? Ikenna blinked. But I'm just 13. The president smiled. And more awake than half my cabinet. Word spread fast. For the first time in Nigerian history, a teenage market boy had been drafted into a special presidential advisory task force on youth reform. Though not officially a minister, his insight would shape future policies. They gave him a modest office in Abuja. It wasn't big, but it had a nameplate, Ikenna Nwosu, Youth Voice. He didn't hire assistants from elite schools. Instead, he called Chidi and 2 other boys from the market. You want to work? He asked. Chidi grinned. I want to change. Together, they brainstormed ideas to support young entrepreneurs, especially from slums and markets. Ikenna's first memo was titled, Respect for the Struggle. It was short, just 3 pages. But when the president read it, he said, This boy writes like he's seen Nigeria from its belly. Because he had. Ikenna's first major project was bold, a floating market school in Port Kano. Children don't have to leave the market to learn, and he said at a press briefing. Let education come to them. People scoffed. A school in a market? With all the noise, the fish, the chaos? But within 2 months, construction began. Donated containers were refurbished into classrooms. Old wooden stalls were converted into blackboards and bookshelves. Volunteers came. Some were people Ikenna had inspired online. On the first day of class, 37 children signed up. The second week, there were 92. By the end of the term, over 300 kids were attending Ikenna's market school. Some of the same children who once mocked him now sat in uniform, raising their hands to ask questions. The smell of fish was still there, but now it mingled with the scent of chalk and possibility. With fame came friction. Not everyone was happy with Ikenna's rise. Certain politicians saw him as a symbol of disruption. A fish boy influencing policy? What next? Okada riders in the Senate? One lawmaker scoffed. An anonymous letter was slid under Ikenna's office door. Stay in your lane, boy. You belong in the mud, not the marble. Mama Nkechi wept when she read it, but Ikenna didn't flinch. He held up the letter and said, if they're sending threats, it means I've left footprints in their clean corridors. Security around him was tightened, but his message grew louder. He spoke at youth rallies, conferences, and even an event at the UN Virtual Summit. Everywhere he went, he ended his speech the same way. Don't wait to be clean to be great. Smell like fish if you must, but never stink of fear. A major media house picked up his story. They titled the documentary, From Stalls to Statecraft, The Boy Who Smelled Like Fish. The cameras followed Ikenna for a month, at his home, in meetings, in the market school. Viewers watched as he cleaned fish with one hand and held a strategy meeting with the other. The documentary aired nationwide. That night, millions of Nigerians, poor and rich alike, saw themselves in Ikenna. Students cried, teachers cheered, politicians squirmed. In classrooms across the country, children pointed at the screen and said, if he can do it, maybe I can too. And somewhere in a dusty village, another boy who smelled of goat droppings sat up straighter. Up until now, Mama Nkechi had stayed silent. She'd watched her son rise like sunrise over muddy waters. But when a reporter asked for her thoughts on live TV, she finally spoke. I knew he was different, she said, her voice thick with emotion. He never complained. He just listened. Even when life slapped him, he said thank you and moved forward. The reporter wiped his eyes. What's your greatest fear now? She smiled. That one day he'll forget the smell of fish. She turned to the camera and added, but knowing my son, he'll probably bottle it and turn it into perfume. The nation laughed and loved her for it. The woman who raised a lion in the swamp. At just 14, Ikenna was receiving offers that most adults would beg for. Political parties sent unofficial envoys, offering scholarships, lands, and even honorary appointments, if he would simply endorse them. One senator even flew to Abuja just to meet him. You are a brand, he said. With your face, we can win an election. Ikenna looked him in the eye. Sir, I am not for sale. The man blinked, stunned. But everything has a price, boy. Not dignity, Ikenna replied. That evening, Mama Nkechi knelt beside him. You know turning them down won't make you friends, right? I didn't come this far to decorate lies, Mama. He would rather go back to selling tilapia than become a puppet in Agbada. Ikenna was nominated for the prestigious African Youth Impact Award, hosted in Accra, Ghana. The hall glittered with international delegates, royalty, investors, ministers. When they called his name, thunderous applause filled the room. He walked up in a simple kaftan, no flashy shoes, no security detail. Just the same quiet confidence that brought him from the market to the stage. During his acceptance speech, he said, don't clap for me. Clap for every boy and girl still scaling fish at 4 a.m., praying someone sees them. I'm not the hero, I'm just a mirror. The entire room stood. It wasn't just a standing ovation, it was a moment. A reminder that greatness doesn't need a suit. Sometimes it wears sandals and smells like the ocean. Weeks later, the First Lady herself invited Ikenna to her Women and Youth Empowerment event. Cameras clicked as she shook his hand, but when the crowd faded, she sat with him privately. Young man, she said, how did you survive all that ridicule? I mean, children are cruel. Ikenna paused. They laughed, but I kept moving. I didn't need them to believe. I needed to keep breathing. She smiled. I wish my own son had your strength. I didn't have a choice, he replied. Strength is what's left when options are gone. She hugged him tightly. Don't let them mold you. I won't, he promised. At a United Nations Virtual Youth Summit, Ikenna was invited to give a 5-minute address. But his message was only 2. He stood before the camera and began. I used to think I smelled bad because of fish, but I've met people in suits who reek of pride, and no soap can fix that. I may still live near a canal, but I walk straighter than men who live in palaces. The world doesn't need more rich people. It needs more people who remember where they came from. He ended the call. Short, sharp, unfiltered. Within hours, the speech was clipped and reposted across the world. Celebrities quoted him. Youths stitched his words into TikToks. Even global news headlines called him the Nigerian truth boy. Back home, not everyone celebrated. In the Port Kano local council, rumors began circulating that the market school was unauthorized. Authorities showed up with papers threatening to shut it down. Mama and Nkechi ran to Ikenna. They say we didn't file the right permits. I'll handle it, he said. But that night, he received another anonymous threat. Stay in Abuja and stop trying to be a savior. This is our turf. He took a deep breath. They're not angry at me, he told his team. They're angry at what I represent, proof that change is possible without them. Then he tweeted, shut the school if you must, but we will build 10 more. The nation exploded with support, and the government backed off, quietly. It happened on a quiet Tuesday. Mama Nkechi collapsed while climbing the stairs to Ikenna's office. A stroke. The doctor's words were a blur. Exhaustion, stress, poor diet over the years catching up. Ikenna sat beside her hospital bed for 3 nights straight. He held her hand, whispered memories from the market, and told her stories to make her laugh. One evening, she opened her eyes and said, Ikenna, promise me you'll take care of your heart. Don't lose it in all this noise. He choked back tears. I won't. You're the compass, Mama. She squeezed his hand weakly. Then you'll never be lost. She made it through. But from that day, Ikenna became quieter, more focused. Fame was noisy, but Mama's heartbeat was the sound he followed. In the slum community of Makoko, Lagos, a young girl named Basola wrote Ikenna a handwritten letter. It read, Dear Sir, I watched your story on YouTube. I also smell like water and fish because my papa's a fisherman. But now when they laugh, I just say, maybe one day the president will send for me too. Thank you for making me feel important. Basola, age 9. Ikenna stared at the letter for a long time. Then he turned to his assistant. Get me a flight to Makoko. I want to meet her. The media thought it was a PR stunt, but when he arrived and hugged Basola in her wooden shack, they knew it was personal. Back in Port Kano, Ikenna returned home for a surprise visit. He walked the market in plain clothes, no escort, no cameras. He wanted to smell the place that raised him, the scent of crayfish, mud, burning oil. He inhaled deeply and smiled. Chidi spotted him. Omo, you want cause traffic again? Ikenna laughed. Just wanted to see if I still belong here. You do, Chidi said, but this place changed since you left. Everyone's dreaming now. They sat together on a crate, watching boys chase a tire down the street. In the distance, someone was selling fish, and for once the smell didn't carry shame. It carried legacy. The Senate announced a new youth empowerment bill to create micro-grants for underprivileged teenagers. It was called the Ikenna Act. Opposition tried to block it, but the public outcry was so fierce that even the most corrupt lawmakers had to pretend to support it. When the bill passed, Mama Nkechi cried, Your name is now law. Ikenna shook his head. It's not my name that matters. It's what it does. And it did. Over 20,000 youths accessed small grants in the first 6 months. Ikenna visited one of the centers personally. They had a poster on the wall, no suit required. Just vision. In a national cabinet reshuffle, the president created a new position, Youth Development Envoy. No salary, just influence. When he offered it to Ikenna, the boy asked, "Can I still go to school?" The president chuckled. "You'll have the best tutors, and you'll still scale fish if you want." Ikenna accepted, but requested one thing. "Give me a seat at the table. Not for myself, for kids like Basola." And so in the grand cabinet room of Nigeria, among generals and governors, one chair stood out. It was smaller, unpolished, but it smelled faintly like fish, and everyone at the table learned to breathe it in with pride. When a star rises too fast, someone will try to shoot it down. A viral blog post appeared. Is Ikenna really who he says he is? It accused him of being a government puppet, claimed he never sold fish, and said his market school was a publicity stunt. Ikenna's phone exploded. Journalists called. Twitter raged. Hashtags flew. Mama and Keiichi sat by the window in silence, staring at the article. After all we survived, now they call us liars? Ikenna put his hand on hers. Mama, the truth doesn't panic, it just stands. Rather than defend himself, Ikenna posted a video. No filter, no suit. He sat at the old fish stall, scaling tilapia. He spoke directly. This is where I'm from. No amount of grammar or gossip can rewrite the smell of my beginnings. The internet erupted in support. Thousands shared their own humble beginnings. And the smear campaign collapsed. Because lies, no matter how loud, can't drown the scent of truth. An official letter arrived from the United Nations. Ikenna was invited to New York to speak at the Global Youth and Inclusion Summit. All expenses paid. Keynote speaker. Mama and Keiichi held the letter like it was made of gold. America, Ikenna grinned. Yes, Mama, you're coming with me. They flew first class. Hotel staff greeted them in tuxedos. But Ikenna packed something unusual in his suitcase, a sealed bag of dried fish. At the conference, he wore a kaftan tailored in Port Kano colors, mud brown and fish scale blue. His speech ended with one sentence. I didn't come to impress. I came to remind the world that diamonds grow in gutters too. The crowd gave a standing ovation. But it was the after party that made headlines, because Ikenna served smoked fish from Port Kano to world leaders. They laughed, chewed, and begged for more. And just like that, the smell that once brought shame became flavor. In an IDP camp in northern Nigeria, a girl named Amina watched Ikenna on a donated projector screen. Her feet had been burnt in a fire that killed her parents. She walked on scars now, not shoes. After seeing Ikenna's story, she wrote him one sentence on a piece of lined paper. I smell like ashes, but maybe I can still grow. The letter reached Ikenna through a volunteer. He cried reading it. Days later, he arrived at the camp with crutches, books, and a hug. He sat beside Amina and said, You don't need to walk fast. You just need to keep moving. She smiled for the first time in a year. That moment didn't go viral, but for Ikenna, it mattered more than any award. A rumor began to swirl, quiet at first, then loud. The president was ill, hospitalized in Germany. Cabinet members started panicking. Power vultures circled. And in the middle of it all, Ikenna was summoned for a confidential meeting with the acting president. You're close to him, the man said. How bad is it? Ikenna shook his head. I'm not a doctor. I'm a boy who smells like fish. The man laughed nervously. Well, the country's looking to you now. Suddenly, Ikenna was more than a symbol. He was seen as a stabilizer. He released a short video the next morning. We are not a country of one man. The president is unwell, but the nation is awake. Stay calm, stay focused. It became the most shared voice message of the year, because somehow people believed the fish boy more than politicians. One Friday, Ikenna visited a mosque in Kano to observe and listen. No cameras, no protocol. After the prayers, an old cleric pulled him aside. Ikenna, you're young, but they already fear your words. That means your tongue holds power. Ikenna nodded. The cleric added, but power is not in the words you say, it's in the ones you choose not to say. That night, Ikenna wrote in his journal, not every insult deserves an answer. Not every truth must be told now. Silence, too, can change a nation. From that point, he spoke less publicly, but when he did, the country leaned in. Because when someone who could speak often chooses not to, the few words they offer become thunder. It came from someone close, a trusted advisor, brought in by Ikenna himself, was caught siphoning funds meant for the market school's expansion. The scandal broke Ikenna's heart. How could he? Mama Nkechi asked. He saw opportunity, not purpose, Ikenna said quietly. The press wanted blood. They asked if Ikenna would defend him. He didn't. Instead, he held a press conference and said, "Greatness isn't in never being betrayed, it's in never becoming the betrayer." The advisor was fired, arrested, and prosecuted. And the market school? It continued, because no man, no matter how greedy, could stop an idea whose time had come. For the first time in months, Ikenna stood alone in front of a mirror. He didn't recognize the suit, or the shiny shoes, or the office. He asked himself, am I still the boy who scaled tilapia at 4 a.m.? So he packed a bag, took a taxi, and returned to Port Kano. Alone. He walked the market barefoot, bought fish, cleaned it, sold it, ate street rice. When a woman asked why he was doing it, he smiled. To remember how I started, before power, before protocol. That day, he rewrote his own rule. Never let your story climb so high that it forgets the smell of the first chapter. A new school was commissioned by the federal government in Abuja, a public boarding school for underprivileged teens. They named it Ikenna Institute for Dignity and Dreams. He was asked to cut the ribbon. As he held the scissors, tears welled up. This school isn't mine, he said. It belongs to every child who was ever laughed at because of how they smelled, what they wore, or where they lived. His speech was broadcast nationwide. Parents wept, teachers cheered, and somewhere in a slum, a boy with torn shoes whispered, I will go to that school. The seed had become a tree, and now it was planting others. The African Union called. They were holding a Continental Youth Summit in Addis Ababa and wanted Ikenna to serve as chairperson of the panel. When he arrived, he sat beside leaders twice his age, but none had a story like his. He didn't speak first. He waited, listened. When his time came, he said, Africa's future isn't hidden in policies. It's hidden in potential, in children with empty plates but full minds, in girls like Basola, in boys like me. The hall erupted. Later that night, the Ethiopian prime minister said to him, You may smell like fish, Ikenna, but your presence smells like change. One night, Mama Nkechi woke up from a dream and called Ikenna, breathless. I saw you standing on a mountain. Below were crowds of children. And you were handing out fish. But when they ate it, they turned into teachers, farmers, and leaders. Ikenna smiled. That's powerful, Mama. She held his hand. Don't stop. Don't ever stop feeding them. Not with food, with faith. That dream stayed with him. He wrote it down, printed it, and framed it on his wall. Feed them with faith. That became his motto, and he carried it into every room, every meeting, every market stall, from that day forward. 1 year after the first school opened, the Port Kano local council did something no one expected. They unveiled a statue. It was placed right at the center of the market, bronze, life-sized, barefoot. A teenage boy stood tall, fish basket on his head, eyes looking ahead. At the base, the plaque read, To the boy who taught us that smelling like fish is not a curse, but a clue to destiny. Ikenna didn't attend the ceremony. He found out on social media. That evening, he walked quietly to the market at night, stood in front of the statue alone, and whispered, I didn't do this alone. Behind him, Mama Nkechi appeared. But you carried it, my son, all the way. Weeks later, a sealed envelope arrived at Ikenna's Abuja residence. Handwritten, personal, from the president. Dear Ikenna, I will be stepping down in the coming months. My health no longer allows me to serve, but I leave knowing this country has seen the future, and that future smells like honesty, humility, and yes, fish. Never stop, son. With pride, Mr. President. Ikenna sat still for a long time. Then he whispered, You never treated me like a boy, so I'll never act small. That letter would never be framed. Instead, he kept it folded in his back pocket, next to the first medal Chidi ever mocked him with. A new aide in the presidential complex once complained during a briefing. Sorry, sir, he said, frowning. Is something Smelling like fish? Ikenna laughed. Must be me. Everyone froze, but instead of embarrassment, Ikenna stood up, extended his arm and said, I'm Ikenna, the fish boy, and if you have a problem with my scent, you might not survive the scent of real work. The room chuckled nervously, but respect settled in. From that day, no one dared whisper about his past. They talked about his plans instead, because legacy smells louder than perfume. Years later, at the opening of the second Ikenna Market School in Lagos, a familiar face appeared. Bisola, now a teenager, confident, standing tall in her school uniform. She was invited to speak. She walked up to the microphone and said, Ikenna gave me more than books. He gave me belief. I walk on scarred feet, but I walk with my head high. Because someone like me showed up and told the world, we matter. Ikenna sat at the back, eyes moist. Mama Nkechi squeezed his hand. She's your echo. No, Ikenna said. She's my answer. At a national youth summit, a special seat had been reserved for Ikenna. Front row, gold tag. But he never sat there. Instead, he pulled a chair from the back of the room and sat among the teens from Ajagunle and Makoko. An organizer whispered, Sir, your seat is in front. Ikenna smiled. No, this one feels better. It still smells like hunger. The audience took notice, and from then on, every youth conference in the country started reserving 2 front seats, one for official guests, one for the humble seat. And guess which one always filled first? A viral clip surfaced of a senator yelling at a young janitor in public. The boy looked terrified. Ikenna reposted the video with just one caption. I was that boy. Once within 24 hours, public outrage forced an investigation. The senator was suspended. But Ikenna didn't stop there. He invited the janitor to Abuja, gave him a scholarship and said, never let anyone slap the dignity out of you, not even with their eyes. That gesture reminded Nigeria, you can rise from the gutter without forgetting who's still in it. On his 18th birthday, his team organized a surprise party. Celebrities, journalists, governors, everyone came with cake and flash. But Ikenna disappeared halfway through. They found him hours later, sitting by the canal in Port Kano with a plate of rice and 1 smoked fish. Mama Nkechi sat beside him. You don't like the party? I do, he said, but I needed to remind myself what birthdays used to feel like when all we had was fish and silence. She smiled. Even if you become president, promise me you'll always have one birthday that smells like fish. I promise. The Emir of Port Kano offered Ikenna a traditional chieftaincy title. He turned it down. Why? The Emir asked, puzzled. It's a great honor. I'm honored truly, but I'm still learning, still growing. Give the title to someone who needs it to be seen. I already have a name that speaks for me. The Emir nodded, impressed. Later, Mama Nkechi asked him, don't you want to be called Chief Ikenna? He smiled. No, Mama. I just want to be called son. That's enough title for me. On a random Saturday, a video surfaced online. It showed Ikenna in disguise, selling fish again at his mother's old stall. Customers didn't recognize him. He scaled fish. He bagged it. He gave exact change. Then one child whispered, wait, you look like that boy from... Before the sentence finished, Ikenna winked and walked away. That clip went viral, not because he returned to where he started, but because he never left it in his heart. Years passed. A new generation grew up hearing about the boy who smelled like fish. They read his quotes in textbooks, studied his policies in school, walked past his statues, attended his schools. Some thought he was a myth until they met him. Graying at the temples now, still humble, still listening. And whenever someone asked, what was your secret, Ikenna? He'd smile and say, they mocked my scent. But they forgot, salt preserves. And I was salted by struggle, seasoned by truth. That smell they hated, it made them remember me forever. Thank you for watching till the end, and please like, comment, and share. And also subscribe if you have not.